Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits, where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us to unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets to effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Okay. Today's episode is a bit of a personal one for me, if I do say so myself. Guest Skye Mercer with Skye HR Consulting, LLC. It's personal because Skye hired me for my very first fundraising job back in the early 2000s. That's right, you heard that. We have remained connected over the years, and today she works with nonprofits, small businesses, as well as government agencies. As an HR professional, Skye has witnessed the changing landscape of our sector and the evolution of leadership. I could talk to Skye for hours, and hopefully one day we can schedule to do just that. But for now, have a listen to this intimate conversation where Skye drops some personal and professional wisdom on the topic of wellness. But first, please allow me to give a big shout out of gratitude to this season's podcast sponsors. Thank you to Fundraising Academy at National University, Nonprofits HQ, and Chazen & Company. Your support in these conversations is greatly appreciated. Okay, well, I am so excited, Skye, to have you in conversation today. First of all, how have you been?
Oh my gosh, it's been way too long since we've talked. I am doing really well. I am, spending time traveling, exploring the Midwest, this summer, and work's going great. And I really don't have a lot to complain about.
Oh, good. So for our listeners, Skye and I go way back, and I love to tell the story because Skye, you truly were instrumental in hiring me for my first fundraising, like legit professional fundraising job in the space. But lo and behold, we had actually met before that. And so this was, of course, well before virtual meetings. So we had like a phone interview. And I remember asking you at the very end, because you said, do you have any questions? And I said, I do. And it was basically like, have we met before? And we had. Which I love the story. So our listeners might pick up on this like long-standing, cherished friendship that I know we have. But as we dive into conversation, Skye, I'm starting out with these questions, right? Like, what are some of the names you go by, the roles, the titles? I believe we play such a big, in a big way in so many parts of our life, our professional life, our personal life, maybe a secret life. Like we all have different roles and titles. What are some of those for you?
Yes. So for work, I'm an HR consultant and leadership coach. In my home life, I am a wife, a stepmom, an aunt, a sister, a friend. Probably like one of the lesser known roles I have is I do volunteer in my community here, and I do a lot of trap, neuter, release for cats, community cats out in the community. So definitely connected with our local shelter here, and yeah, that would probably be my lesser known title, but all the norm titles: sister, friend,
And a cat mom,
aunt, and
right?
cat mom. Yes, to Harriet the Great, who looks like Grumpy Cat.
I love it. Yeah. And I kind of spoke over you. You said neighbor and friend. So that's a lot of roles. And I'm really hearing that from so many of our rock star guests, just like yourself. Tell us a little bit about the HR side, the leadership side, because that's a big piece in our sector in particular.
It's a huge piece. So I've worked in HR for over 20 years. I know you and I are just going to stop counting now because it's just going to keep going and going. So I specialize in working with nonprofits and small businesses, and I work with clients all over the US. And, I started as a solopreneur about 5 years ago, and I love it. I work primarily from home. I do client visits here and there, but I absolutely love the work I do. I feel very privileged and very grateful to have like work that I actually enjoy and working with people I actually enjoy working with, which is really amazing. I have great clients. And so I had a conversation yesterday with a really good friend of mine, and she reflected back to me like the last 5 years and the journey and the launching during COVID and the being scared about not having a steady paycheck and all of those things that come along with like going off and doing your dream, doing your passion. And then to today where I'm doing leadership training, handbooks, monthly retainer HR consulting, and I'm launching an HR Foundations learning program for people who have HR in their job title, but they don't come from an HR background. And so there are people, operations managers and finance directors, HR directors, HR managers. And it's all of the things I wish I would have known when I came into the HR field. And so that's something I'm really excited and passionate about right now.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. One of the roles I take on, as you know, is an interim executive role, often like that interim CEO. For small shops, HR like falls within my realm as well. And I know enough, I think, to be in trouble or to get us in trouble with HR, which is not what you want to do, right? Like that is certainly not a good success metric of HR. But that's a lot of hats. You're wearing a lot of hats, Skye, and kudos to you for also building that out as a resource for individuals, in this space. So how do you handle everything, especially like for you, unlike some of my other podcast guests that I've had on, like you do have that people focus, and I'm not saying my previous guests haven't, but you have it from the HR lens. You have it from, the people lens, from the HR and leadership. So how do you manage that personal professional commitment while you're also, I'm assuming, helping other professionals manage this for themselves? So how does that show up for you?
Yeah, so it's such an interesting question and a good question. I think because my work is so involved with people, like emotional stewardship, shall we say, like it's not uncommon for me to be on a phone call or a Zoom meeting with people with very high emotions, crying, tears, like, so there's a lot of emotions involved in the HR work that I do. And there's a lot of people work, boosting people, coaching people, mentoring people. And so I find that in order for me to be able to rejuvenate, in order for me to be able to manage what I need to manage for myself and for my family, I have really been on a journey of setting up boundaries for myself between my work and my life, my personal life. So I have a tendency to overgive. I'm a Gen Xer raised by baby boomers. I've been working since I was 15. We worked 12-hour days, as you know, for most of our 20s and 30s, maybe even more. And, I need to do better. And I have been doing better with, utilizing tools, productivity tools, really implementing good boundaries, like I said, and really focusing on my own well-being, because when I do that, I'm better at my work. And it's so counterintuitive. I know we hear it all the time. It's like, step away from your work to come up with a creative solution for your work. Step away with your work to get better at your work. And that has been a very difficult lesson for me to learn, coming from the background I come from, which was you never stop working.
No,
So,
me
yeah.
too. Absolutely. My parents, like you, boomers, they were entrepreneurs, and I have that thread in me. Like it is in my DNA to work, I'm going to say to work hard, which I'm really shifting from feeling like we have to work hard as a definer, right? Like as a definition. You might have seen me, Skye. I jotted down emotional stewardship.
Mm,
That is a word I've not heard before. That is new
yeah.
to me. Stewarding emotions, that in and of itself takes a very compassionate person. But you shared with us that people show up in conversations with you emotionally, often emotional, and there's tears, there's probably anger. I want to dive into really, like, I was taught to not cry at work, right? Like to not bring these emotions to work, especially in a power dynamic of being a female and having a male supervisor. What can you share with us maybe about how times have changed, if they've changed, or if that's a culture? What are you seeing there? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's going, oh my gosh, this is maybe becoming a little normalized or, like frequent. And even I remember the first time I cried to my boss, Guy, I felt guilty. I felt so guilty. Talk to us about this.
Yes, I see still a lot of that thread that you have described in primarily management, leadership. There's still like a really like big need, in my opinion, to help managers and leaders process emotions so they don't react, they respond. Because of that power dynamic, their reaction can have a more significant ripple effect. So emotional management, emotional regulation is really, really important as leaders. So I am still seeing, folks who come from similar backgrounds and ideology as you and I, where they almost feel guilty for having emotions. And then I see a whole different dynamic if we swing the pendulum the other way, where there are folks who feel like it's kind of their employer's responsibility to manage their emotions. And so, like, it goes both ways. And so I'm trying to help steward, facilitate a workplace in which it's okay to be human. It's okay to be your authentic self. It's okay to have emotions. However, leaders and managers have an obligation to process those emotions differently and in different spaces. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you need to be a robot with your staff and not be a human. Like, I am a robot, I don't have emotions. No, I'm saying that, utilizing peer learning, utilizing a coach, a leadership coach, talking to your HR, sometimes that can be a great place to just vent and be able to get emotions out so that you can more clearly and logically make decisions. But I do think we are on more of a trajectory of authenticity and inclusion and belonging in the workplace. We're not quite there yet fully, but I do think that is where the US workplace is going.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that because especially in that interim space, I see that more and more of the varying, as you said, that pendulum. There's individuals similar to me that were really taught, you don't, well, really, like, you don't bring personal life to your work life. Now I have disrupted that, especially over the last 10 years, like I am me and I am me 24/7. And so how I show up at work, if I'm having a bad day or, like, I am human, I'm not a robot. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
yeah, I
And you've been
appreciate
a
that.
mentor to me. So I was just talking to one of our shared friends, mutual friends, Malia Dunn, who's a DEI consultant. And both you and Malia have been like mentors to me in this space. So I love your philosophy on work-life blend. Like that really resonates with me. And then, like, you probably saw, I just recently sent out and plugged this podcast and sent out an article on HR updates and also how it's okay to take a break and kind of tied
Yeah.
it into different HR policies and practices. And I did that because I'm seeing people like you do that, where you're bringing in it's okay to take a break. It's okay to be you. It's okay to blend your work and your life and be your authentic self.
Oh, you just gave me chills. And thank you. What an honor to be a mentor to you and vice versa. I would love to know, because it did not get lost on me, Skye. You mentioned boundaries, and you mentioned some tools, some resources that you're using. What are those? Because I know our listeners are
Yeah.
always looking for the tangible item that we can go to. What are you using that's working for you?
Okay, I love this question. So first and foremost, shout out to my coach, Kim Kimball, who does Voxer coaching.
Oh
She
yeah.
is available. Actually, we use the software app Signal, but similar as Voxer. She's available for me to verbally process, emotionally process in an appropriate space so that I can
Yeah.
then provide the best service possible to my clients. That has been huge. The other thing that has been big for me this past year is, you see a lot of these tools and resources around productivity, prioritization, time management, AI. And in the past, I've really seen that. And a lot of the times it is ways in which like corporations are like, work 24/7, work 24 hours a day, be productive. But lately I've been tying some of those tools into my why of prioritizing my well-being and showing up in a space that best serves those around me. So some of the tools that I use for prioritization, task management, AI have saved me. I would say right now, this past month, implementing Trello, implementing Gemini, um, implementing some prioritization tools around like what to get done first, kind of capping off my day at a certain time, setting those boundaries around that. I'm saving around an hour to an hour and a half a day. Not to mention
Wow.
all the time I'm saving by not commuting. So I am
Yes.
getting more done in a more comfortable way and in a
Mhm.
way that prioritizes my well-being and has it so that I can actually walk away at the end of the day and feel like I've accomplished something instead of like I have a million more things to do the rest of the day. So that's been a
Yes.
big journey of mine and something I'm pretty proud of lately.
Well, here's my Trello.
Yeah.
It's still a piece of paper, right? Like I have so much swirling in my head. Maybe others can appreciate and resonate with that as well. I've got notebooks for every one of my clients, and I do my best to capture everything in that notebook. But then I find myself swirling in thoughts, right? Whether I'm
Mm.
trying to get fed or I'm trying to exercise or, while I'm in the shower, like whenever I have that clear moment, work does tend to show up for me. And so I love hearing the resources that you're using. I've not heard of Gemini. That's a new one. I'll have to do some research on. We had another guest, Micah, and actually with Bloomerang, and she has a blended family. And she nerded out over her systems and her spreadsheets and like other platforms and things like this. So I appreciate you sharing that. We don't have too much time, but I, of course, have so many more questions. But you have shared with us that you've been exploring the Midwest. You have taken some time away. It's okay to take a pause and to take a break. So, what are some additional things that you do, Skye, to really find your relaxation, your self care, maybe even have some fun and be playful? Like, what are some of those things that you're finding yourself attracted to?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Because I'm so extroverted in my day to day, I do tend to swing toward more introverted activities. I adore my husband, which is not always the case for everyone, but I love him. And so we spend time together. I mean, just even having coffee in our porch room on the weekends is one of my favorite things to do. Or last night we sat outside in our back patio in our zero gravity chairs, watching the birds and the trees and spending time in nature and outside is very important to me. I also live in such a cool community. Shout out to the Amanas in Iowa. It is a historical society and German community that has a number of festivals throughout the year. Oktoberfest, we have a Wurst Fest for Bratwurst Fest, we have garden festivals, we have all kinds of things that really create community and are events that I love to go to. I'm also unique in that I really enjoy my in-laws and my my family here. That's my husband's family.
Wow.
So that's also unique that I enjoy spending time with them. I love crafting. Crafting is a big one for me right now. And then biking, we ride our cruiser bikes. One of our favorite bike paths is here in Amana. And gardening. Gardening is another one. Canning. I just keep coming up with like really, really exploring my passions. And then like travel, we went to Mackinac Island. We're heading down to Branson, Missouri. We're going to Galena, Illinois, great little town. And so I'm just really enjoying this summer and gearing up for fall.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It sounds like a full calendar, but I also appreciate the variety and how I can only imagine how that feeds your soul, feeds your joy and your happiness, feeds your relationship. Yes, you totally adore your husband. I love seeing that.
Yeah.
And I love that you also adore his family. That's
Yeah.
another thing
It's
we
so
have in
unique.
common.
I'm like, I really like my
So unique.
mother-in-law. Like, it's really,
Yeah.
really cool. I'm very lucky to have the family that I have back home in the Northwest and then also here in the Midwest.
In the Midwest. Well, tell us where we can find you. And I'm going to have another question after this, but tell us, where, if we want to know more about the HR consulting you provide, more about the leadership coaching you provide, where's the best way for us to find you, Skye?
The best way to find me is skyehrconsulting.com. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I would love to have folks reach out to me. I do a complimentary discovery call. If you're interested in on demand HR advice and resources without a lengthy contract, I also offer HR strategy sessions that you can book on my website and we can dive right into paid consultation as well.
Fantastic. And that's Skye, SKYE. Don't forget the
Yes,
E.
although I bought the
Yeah.
domain with SKY as well, just
Oh, that was
because,
so smart. Of
everybody,
course.
spells it wrong.
Yeah. That was very, very
Yeah,
smart of you. Well, speaking
yeah.
of smart, what is like a final words of wisdom, a final kind of like message that you'd like to send out to those listening when it comes to our personal wellness, perhaps building out a blended work life, lifestyle, if you
Mm,
will? What is some of that like, here's the wisdom that I want to share? What would that be?
yeah, probably it doesn't have to be hard to be work. That's something that we talked about at the beginning that's so ingrained in me
Mhm.
that you are not working unless it's hard. And that isn't the case, especially when, you're in mid-career like you and I in a lot of different areas of our work. We're now experts. And so sometimes it can feel really easy to be doing what we're doing. And we're like, wait, is it really this easy? It's okay to have that flow, to have that easeful feeling and still be adding value in the work you're doing.
That is so good. It took me a little while to feel comfortable, kind of like I felt guilty when I expressed emotion. I felt guilty when I was charging a client and having so much fun doing the work and maybe even having some time left at the end of the project. So I think that was a fantastic, sage advice for you to share because it's,
Thank
we
you.
are going to stop counting how long we've been in business, but it's been
Yeah, we're
fantastic.
done counting at 20. We're not
That's
counting
great.
anymore. The other thing I wanted to say is I truly believe you and I would have met no matter what. So we met at Garden Club, then we met
Yeah.
in the job interview at the employer that we worked at. And then I feel like we have so many mutual friends all over the US that show up in
Yeah.
your feed and my feed. And I'm like, oh, Jarrett? Like, so I just feel like we
Right.
walk in the same circles and we would have met at some point. And I value you as a friend and
Thank
as a
you.
mentor, and so grateful to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And to add to that, not to elaborate, but you also knew my son's father before I
Yes.
knew him. Like
Wait,
just the connections of everything.
so interesting. I know. I bet if we sat down and counted, it's like we could find the 6-degree separation of Jarrett and Skye like 20 times over.
Right. That's true. That's true. And it's probably more like just a 2
Yeah, it
separation, right?
probably is.
So
1 to
yeah.
2. Yes.
Fantastic conversation, fantastic advice. I really value your insight, Skye, because I know that you have, oh my gosh, like you are just the boots on the ground when it comes to the people management and how leaders are showing up in this space, which is often quite heavy, quite laborious, quite emotional. And I feel so privileged to be in this space. And I am so grateful to know that we have amazing, compassionate coaches and leaders like you to support us when sometimes we need that extra support. So
Aw,
thanks for joining me.
thank you, Jarrett. Thank you for having me.